Welcome, everyone, to episode 342 of Just Joshing. I'm your host, Joshua Pantellaresco. I write stuff in Podcast 2. Today, Matt Moore finally joins the podcast. I'm finally starting the CanCon interviews, ladies and gentlemen. This has been an interesting time, nonetheless. First and foremost, I kind of want to thank everybody who downloaded the last episodes. It's so far still getting downloads even to this day. It's been an incredibly cool success for me. I'm going to be part 2 will air Sunday. I'm actually going to be extending it a little bit with more details on that later. We've hit the magic point in life, I think, where like I said, content's going to be in high demand, and I think it's important, if you are listening to this, that if you are creative, this is kind of your chance to share your story, because right now people are in desperate need of stories, and stories. John Twelpelk said this best: art is ultimately the expression of hope. Right now, we don't know how long this is going to go. Might be a few weeks, might be a few months. I don't think it's going to go a year, but it's going to go a while. So while in this process, share your stories, do your thing, let what will happen happen. I'm going to be continuing, of course, this weekend. Part 2 will come out, but I'm actually finally starting the CanCon interviews. So Matt Moore was first. So Matt Moore and I ended up being I ended up being a panelist in having panels, really. So they let me do a reading. I wanted to get some practice, and it turns out me and Matt Moore ended up doing a reading together. And as a result, Matt and I ended up compromising. I started very happy, and he did his thing, and I closed it out. And it was a good, actually really cool reading mix. So I liked it. We got along pretty well, and I asked to interview him. He said sure. So let's just get to that conversation, shall we?
This episode of Just Joshing is sponsored by Indie Imprint. Indie Imprint supports creators by creators. Whether you are writing a book or creating a video game, Indie Imprint works with its clients to produce, edit, and present their projects to the world. For more information, check out their website at www.indieimprint.com.
We'll start with the story. Sounds really cool.
So sure, talking just about how things can be chaotic with interviews at conventions. I was at NECON, which is it's like the New England Writers Convention. It's a horror convention that takes place, I think it's July, down in Rhode Island. And I'm sitting down with this guy like I'm sitting down with you, except the giveaway bags were near where we were sitting. And they are paper bags, and they're fairly big, and they're full of heavy books. And so as we're sitting there, for whatever reason, that's when people decided, let me paw through these ones that nobody had picked up yet, just for any good books that I didn't get in my bag. So it's like, so Matt, in your short fiction, crinkle, 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 some of the issues you're talking about are topics you're playing with, crinkle, 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 slam. So yeah, but I think that, like you were just saying, it's the chaos, it's the immediacy, it's the intimacy of these events.
Here's the thing: if this, and a lot of podcasters will go out of their way to edit the conversation, make it as clear and pristine. And there's a point where that's very valid, because let's be real, you want to hear the conversation as best you can. Now there are some limitations, obviously. Like if you're in a room where there's a lot of noise, there's not enough editing equipment in the world to fix that.
Right.
But you want to make sure the conversation is clear.
Yep.
But I find personally what's interesting about real life is how things just, like, for example, I've had many an interview where a waitress will come up, hey, would you like something to order?
Yeah.
Right? And that's real.
Yeah.
Why would you take that out? It actually adds something. It adds a dimension. It's a world building tool. If you look at a podcast in terms of storytelling, the story that matters here is yours.
Okay.
Because I'm interviewing you and you are the subject. But that doesn't mean that the world we're talking to does not impact the conversation we're having.
Right.
Right? Ergo, why not let the world in a little bit so people get that sense of what is actually going on?
Yeah, I agree. Like a radio interview is, by its nature, a controlled, sterile environment. There's probably been a little bit of back and forth between the interviewer and interviewee about, we're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about that, because they've got to cut it down to, you have 7 minutes and 12 seconds before we have to go to commercial, versus podcasting. You look at like Mark Maron, who's got one of the most popular podcasts. Those always start, fade up.
Okay. No worries.
Right. We were just talking about.
Actually, like I said,
That's great.
chaos.
I'm okay, thanks.
Yes.
Sorry about 5 minutes. We're just with the
No worries. See, chaos. It's good.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, it's what actually good fiction is about. Fiction is about change. Something should change in your story, and you need that chaotic element. If everything is perfect, then nothing's going to change.
And then it gets sterile and boring.
Yeah.
Right. It just does. That's why also when I do a lot of my interviews, I don't ask a lot of questions.
Okay.
Because there's no because here's the thing. A question. If I ask a question naturally, like for example, I'm talking about your work. Like why do you write about such like the world ending? Like why does that fascinate you so much? And I will get you to answer that at some point. Right? That's an interesting question. But because we're talking about chaos, right? Mm-hmm. If I go from that and I dovetail into a question, it's not a natural thing, right? We have to randomly work our way. Like well, good conversations are random. We get there when it fits the right tone, the right topic. There's a point to jump into it.
Definitely, yeah.
Right? That feels real, right?
Yeah.
I actually have an argument with, I mentioned this to Tanya when I interviewed her. I think first person is going to come back, and the reason why I think it's going to come back is the audiobook. Here's the thing, right? Audio, when you do third, is super, super, super hard to get someone fully immersed into it. You got to do a really good job of painting that experience out there because it's a third person. It's another person.
Yeah.
You have to give someone invested in that person.
Right.
Yeah. That's the nature of third person.
Yeah.
First person, it is technically another person, but you're hearing I and me, and this is a subconscious thing.
Yeah.
Right? I, me. That's the person reading the story. Suddenly now I'm having a relationship with the person reading the story, and that's the subconscious start, right? Now I'm listening. Now I'm actually in that moment because now it's no longer a third person I may not know and have to invest in. You are reading to me. You are talking to me. You are interacting with me. Audio has a language.
Yeah.
Just like cinema has a language, just like the written word has a language about how it's done. And I feel that if audiobooks are going to be a big proponent of the creative process for writers going forward, I think first person is going to come back.
It's a really interesting take on that.
Yeah.
But it also brings up the viability of audiobooks.
Yeah.
That audiobooks were the big thing when there were books on tape. Tape's kind of gone by the wayside.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, I think reading has kind of also slowed down with the emergence of YouTube, with the emergence of streaming services, especially because you can now watch an entire movie on your phone with your headphones in on your way to work, and that's passive consumption versus active consumption. And audiobooks kind of walk that line because it is still passive, you don't need to do anything. But like some people have said, I can't stand audiobooks because from what you're saying is, I can't get into it. I don't want somebody else's voice, even first person, getting in the way. And as we have this diffusion of media, even if it was, I need to listen to something because I'm in the car, we now have the podcasts coming up versus the book, which might be a 20-hour investment versus, Mark Maron just did a 1-hour interview with so-and-so that I can split up between my commute and commute out.
Yeah, and obviously circumstances do it, but I think that's also, as a counterbalance to that, the mediums are all closer. They're a lot closer now. So a book is written with a consensus. It feels more cinematic. Descriptions, if you look at the descriptions of the past, there's a lot less foreplay. Let's get to the cut to the chase of the story, whatever that is, right? And it's nature because when you look at a movie just everything is about the economy of words to action. That's what movies are motion, right? So sound is, as you so eloquently put it, is somewhere in the middle of that, right? It is motion, but it's not. It's whereas the movie's like a train. Maybe an audiobook's more like a Zamboni, right? It's a little slower. It's chugging along, but it's not going that fast either, right?
I get where you're going. It's not like this big lumbering machine. You need 6 weeks of training to operate. But
you don't need 6 weeks of training.
But I mean, within all of that is, the intersection of audiobook and podcast. We have like Podcastle and Pseudopod and Escape Pod and Drabblecast and Nightmare Magazine does audiobooks, and I think Clark's World I think will do audiobooks of their stuff. And so you are getting that bite-sized snippet of storytelling without the 20-hour investment.
But I feel like right now at this point, audiobooks are still not done well.
Yeah, I know the industry numbers for that, but yeah, I don't know anybody who buys it anymore.
No, I know people who do buy audio. There's a strong demand for it. It's just but the thing about that is, I've listened to a number of audiobooks. I don't think they're done well.
Okay.
Right. I think there's still it's like when you first, like the first movies, when you watch the first movies that are being made.
Right.
Everybody's groping for the language. Right. So like the Cloud Divers, I'm going to work on an audiobook in the spring for it. Right. It'll be out in like probably April. And one of the things I want to do is I want the book to feel like a video game when you listen to it.
Okay.
Right. Because when you're in the cloud, especially when you're in the cloud, it should have. I want it, and specifically, I want it to feel like an 8-bit vibe.
Okay, yeah.
Right, an 8-bit vibe. So because everything's about experience, everything like storytellers. What the goal, what we do is we create an experience for our listener, our reader, our whoever is our audience is and what they do. We're creating an experience for it. I feel that audiobooks to this point, they are getting better at this, but they haven't figured out how to properly cater to their audience.
As somebody who's doing that, I want to get your opinion, because I've heard audiobooks that are just, Stephen King's Pet Sematary by Stephen King, the straight reading, versus the multiple voice cast with the sound effects that's flowing back to radio dramas of yesteryear.
I love the radio drama stuff. Like
they were looking for their language of how do we do this in audio.
Yeah.
When we just have that one channel, but we've got all these different things we can draw on. And like some books will do the full cast with the sound effects, others will just do one person who knows how to read really, really well versus one person who doesn't know how to read well.
Well, a person that read well can get the job done. A person that can actually read well can really, really do it. I think though, but again, a person that reads well, there's a style to how they tell the story. A person who doesn't read well has no style. They're just reading the words. They're not immersing themselves in the words, right? I think one person can do an audiobook really, really well. But I also feel like so one of my favorite podcasts is called Sage and Savant.
Okay.
They tell stories every month. It takes them a month to do. Like they're one a month. They're brilliantly well done. They are old school radio dramas. Here's what I think. I think for audiobooks, the answer is somewhere in the middle of that. You need someone that reads very well. And you can add effects. I think this is where there are the challenges, and this is the challenge with my book, right? I want to create a specific experience, and that's cool. But I have to still leave room for interpretation to the audience. And the cool thing about a book is, and this is the thing about a book, I can see your world completely differently than how you see it.
Yes. And me as the author versus you as the reader.
Yeah. Right. And that's fantastic. Because again, your perspective is different than mine. Neither are wrong.
Yep.
Right?
Oh yeah.
That's the best thing about literature.
I've always said that the author has the least amount to say about what a story is really about.
Yes, absolutely. On the flip side though, right? Authors control the experience of read about what they say, and more importantly, what they don't say.
Yep.
Audio can be the same thing. What do you highlight? What do you don't? Why? These are storytelling questions.
Yes.
Right? I feel when I see an audiobook, they're still in like the mass produced, we gotta get this as quickly as I can. I'm not gonna name some of the names of what you listen to because I don't want to get in trouble. right? But some of them suck.
Okay.
Some of them really suck because again, I get it, there's budgetary constraints, and sometimes you have to live with the fact that, okay, we don't have the budget for all these cool little effects and notes, and I get that. But at least read it well. At least have someone that's really, really engaged with the work versus someone that's just reading copy after copy after copy like a machine. I don't want that. No author wants that. That is the absolute worst, right? You want someone invested in your work. You want, like, The Sky is Falling is a brilliant work, right? You want that feeling people get when they get climbing to the top, wondering maybe it's like that moment of pure nihilism they get coming to the top. You want people to feel that, right? And in that moment where you're just about to go off the edge, you reel them back in, because that's what you do. That's the experience you're creating. It's like that moment of the world has ended now. In that moment, I don't know how I can go on, and then somehow, some way, you do. That's the experience you create with that story. That should be the goal of the audiobook.
That's really interesting. I took a film class in university. I've always been interested in cinema, and also now television is becoming so much more cinematic. The idea of what do you show and what do you not show, especially in editing, like in the storytelling of cinema. There's not a lot of great directors anymore, but the good ones. One of my favorite is David Fincher, and I saw this great YouTube dissection of here's what makes Fincher movies have a particular look, and it's how, like, one of the examples they use, and I was just watching this last night, is the scene from Seven, which is going back some years. But it's when Somerset, played by Morgan Freeman, Mills, played by Brad Pitt, and the captain, played by L. Lee Emery, better known as the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket, are talking about the gluttony murder scene. And they're all set up in their own distinct shots. And then Morgan Freeman's framing is changed. And the reason is, he has reached a different place in this discussion than the other two. They're not with him yet. And it's really, really subtle, and it isn't until it was pointed out. But we're not seeing any of the other three. And then we cut to a 3-shot that kind of brings them all together, and now they're on the same page. Then we cut to Brad Pitt from a slightly different angle, because he's now in a different place.
Yeah.
So they're in a different place in their thinking, shown by the different placement of the camera. But it's what they're showing, but also what they're not showing is they don't show them all together until they're all together.
So one of my favorite... So Dark Knight's a good movie, like a really good movie, and another good director too, in Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
So my favorite scene in there is the Batman Joker interrogation scene. There's a point where
in the police.
In the police station, right? There's a point when the Joker's talking to Batman, the camera shifts, right? And it's the Joker talking to. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's Joker talking to Batman about, like, you know, they need you right now, but they're gonna cast you out like a leper. And although not, and like, a pretty good foreshadowing what the end of the movie is going to be like. But also, if you look at the scene, you can see there's a point in there where Joker is subconsciously getting in Batman's head.
Yeah.
And when you see what happens next, when Joker goes, for a while I thought you are a dent. The way you threw yourself at her, he had gotten under Batman's skin.
Yeah.
But he did it earlier, and they showed it how the framing was done.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to go back and watch it.
Yeah, it's a really neat, like, just look at how when it cuts to Batman, the first time you cut to Batman, the angles reverse. It's not like the angles actually reverse, not the same as anybody else. And then when it comes back around to the Joker again, then it goes back to normal. But there's that moment where the Joker's literally getting in his head.
Wow, yeah.
Right? And you can see it, and it's done in film. There's a language to cinema.
Oh, yeah.
There's a language to it. And I had a friend of mine who lives in Ireland now. He was directing stuff, and he was showing me, like, there are old school horror, unfortunately. Old school, that's probably me, actually. It is me. Okay. So, yeah, we're both popular individuals. Just what can I say, right? But the thing of it is, right? There's languages to this stuff. I feel audiobooks, I still by and large uncharted language, and I feel like the balance hasn't been. It's somewhere between a voraciously good reader. It can be a voice actor. Voice actors are great. Some of them are amazing for it. Mine is coming up on like around episode 313 of my podcast. He's actually voicing the Cloud Diver, so he's going to do Johnny, Stevie Y, like all the different. I'm really curious what the voice of Stevie Y is going to be when I hear it, because that I have a bit of an idea what that voice is, because it's very smart ass, but it's just like very curious what he comes up with, so it's one of those situations where I'm curious, because I know that's the other thing too. Whoever's reading the story, it's like any other kind of acting. Actors bring so much into their work, into the work of what you're doing. Heath Ledger's Joker is fascinating.
Yeah.
But why? It's not just the script. The script's really smart, by the way. It's very, very smart. My favorite line for him, but my favorite scene is not because of actually what happens, but just the way the dialogue was. The pencil trick.
Yeah.
Give me one reason why I shouldn't put you here. Would you like to see a magic trick? Yeah. That's not the answer you expect to hear with that question.
Yeah.
Right? And then the next thing, after he performs that magic trick, poor guy, that's a really, really brutal way to go. Once he performs that trick, goes, and that suit, wasn't cheap. You ought to know, you bought it. what did that say about the Joker?
Yeah.
What did that say about the mob? How he viewed the mob, right?
Yeah.
And he said that at the very beginning. Not, it was sarcastic, it was snippy, but it was somebody that the Joker saw he could use. He told them that without saying a word.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. But Ledger, the way he carried himself, the cadences, the story he added to the Joker, just in how he portrayed him, that made it work. And again, we're looking at audio. Voice actors are creative people.
Yep.
Right? Readers are creative people. Why not let the reader give them a little room to stretch? It may not always work.
I think authors also have to have, if you're going to be doing a reading, you also have to have that muscle of at least knowing how you're going to present it.
Yes.
And I've gone to some readings that is almost a performance that can be a bit over the top. Which, if that works, it works. What I try to do, like the story that when we were doing our reading together that I read, Touch the Sky, they said, the last one, that story is me processing the death of my mother 9 years ago. And so when I first started reading it, I would get really, really choked up, and it was really hard to get through, especially there's a line, which is kind of the breaking point, and then we hit denouement, which is nothing means a goddamn thing anymore. And just for listeners to the story is about the world has gone through an apocalypse where the sky has fallen. And what that means and how that happened and all the physics and metaphysics around it isn't explored. It's just that what we call the sky is this gray shell that has encapsulated the planet, and it's about the height of a decent skyscraper. So it's set on about I think it's 32-floor building in Toronto, and from there you can literally touch the sky. But when I read that, it's from a non-named, non-gendered character who goes up and has to decide if they're going to touch the sky, which, according to myth, legend, common wisdom, you can basically let go of your emotional state. So no more grief, but also no more joy. And a lot of people have done this in this. The original title of the story was Grey New World. And the magazine that was going to buy it said, we don't like stories that are rip-offs of others, or homages or rip-offs or whatever, come up with a new title, so we did. But when I read that, because it was my experience, I always read it with a bit of an angry, frustrated energy to it. And then my friend Marie Bilodeau, who's an Ottawa author and professional storyteller, we were on a panel together talking about short fiction and our favorite flash fiction stories, and she surprised me by reading that story as one of her favorite pieces of flash. And Marie brought this completely different energy to it.
Yes.
And I saw elements in the story that I hadn't intended to put there that I realized were there just by her spin on the reading. She didn't change the words, she didn't do anything. She just read it a little bit differently. And so now when I read that story, it's one of my favorites because there's little backstory for the character. We don't know their name. We just know what they're going through, and it takes place over 15 minutes, and it's maybe 1,200 words, so it's very, very short. But what it taught me is that depending upon my mood that day, I can read that story in how I want and give the reader the listener a certain angle.
She taught you how to let go, and not the feelings, but she taught you like, you know what? I don't have to do it this specific way anymore. I can try different things. Right, but now she actually made you a better performer.
She did.
Yeah.
She also made me a better storyteller in the idea of Marie is seeing things in my work that I intentionally put there, but if she saw them, they're there. And even if I were to push back on something, which I didn't because I agree with her interpretation, like I said before, I have the least to say about what a story is really about because a story doesn't exist until it's in somebody else's head. So what they bring to it, what they see to it, I forget what the story was or something, but I'd written a story and it got published and I was reading a review of it and it said something like, well, in this story, Matt is talking about like post-colonial Marxism in the era of cryptocurrency. Like that wasn't really it, but just go with it. And like, not at all originally, but if you see it's there, then it's there.
Yeah.
And if that's your interpretation, if that's what you're taking away from the story, I've had an impact. Art should change someone by exposure to it.
Absolutely.
And if it's not how I originally intended, it doesn't matter. It's that it just made an impact.
Yeah, and that's the important thing. The worst thing you want is apathy. It's ironic that I was thinking when you mentioned your title, it actually reminded me of a quote. Better success checkered in theater than the great twilight in between.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it actually made me think of when I heard the Great New World. I was like, okay, that's cool. I like it. It was smart, right?
Yeah.
But it's a really good story. It is a really, really good story. So I wanted to mention. So we kind of accidentally met. It was kind of one of those. It was kind of so. Due to a bug, so I come in with because due to my junk mail not giving me all my emails in time, I didn't get into any panels this weekend, which is totally. I've certainly made the most of my time. I'm not going to argue with that.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
This is probably coming out in 2023 based on how many interviews you've done. And everyone's going to know who I am as the best-selling Pulitzer winner and by 2023.
You're good enough.
Or I'll just be another public servant.
No. You're good enough. I'm not joking. You're good enough. Yeah. You just go out. I think for you need to do a big novel. Just because you need to go long form.
Okay.
You got the chops.
I am. It's funny you should mention that because I am working on a novel now, and it's and I write predominantly horror, and I call myself a dark science fiction and horror writer. But what that really means is I'm writing a horror story just with robots and spaceships in it, and looking at the mechanisms under the hood, I'm working with horror tropes because that's what I'm comfortable with. But I am working on a novel now. I've been writing my whole life, but only seriously in the last 12 years or so. I wrote all through grade school. I've been writing since I could hold a pen.
Yeah.
But what happened was when I got married, my wife, who lived here in Ottawa, and I was down where I'm originally from in the U.S., she moved down, so she didn't know anybody, didn't have a social circle, so I couldn't be like, hi, honey, I'm going to go off into the bedroom and write for a couple hours, and, you're on your own. So I kind of fell out of writing for a while and got back into it maybe 12 years ago, working short form for a while. And then a couple of years back, started fooling around with a novel I had an idea for a while. But you talk about the chops. Writing a novel and writing a short story are two completely different things. It's about as similar as writing a screenplay or a stage
no. I agree.
Right.
But again, and I'm going to go in terms of speaking of creating an experience.
Right.
So the hardest thing I had to learn as a writer was not to separate my head and my heart. Cerebral, that's
killer.
Yeah, it's killer. But when you start, you always do. I think when we're young, we're taught to build walls, and we have to learn how to take those down. I found my work became, I think, good when I let my own heart into the story, right? And I use the very real things that have happened to me to shape the worlds I create, right? No matter how silly they may seem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? How silly they may seem, it's always the little, you cracked up when I did the elevator music thing, right? You're right. That's real, right? That's a very real observation.
We've all been there.
Yeah, we've all been there, right? And it's like, right? You use those things and you let yourself do that because it adds depth, color, shade, and whatever the case may be. You do that with everything you write, and that's great. And I think the reason, yes, writing a long form story, because I know that I suck at short stories, right? That's not my thing, and something I will try. It's I will do one good short story. I can do poetry.
Okay.
Right? I can do comic books. The short stories. I don't know how. I have too much of a big mouth. I just cannot keep it that. It's really hard to be that condensed.
It's just to go back to what you're talking about with heart and head. My creative writing teacher in high school, who I dedicated my short story collection to, who unfortunately had died only a few years ago, and she was not a young woman when she was teaching me, so I was not surprised she had passed away, but it was like, is profanity okay?
Go. No.
It's shit. Of all the things, I would have loved to have told this woman, her name was Joan Garber, what she meant to me, and it took me decades to really internalize what she was trying to tell me. And I'm choking up a little bit right now. And my dedication of my collection which is my first long form work, is to her, because the advice she gave me, which has never been surpassed by anyone, is, Matt, I don't see enough of you in your work. And that completely, I was 16, 17.
Yeah.
But that completely changed everything, the way I saw creating fiction, because I was trying to, I don't even remember what I was trying to create, but that's always been that of all the notes and all the things and all the tactics and the strategies, that is the bedrock foundation of you always have this regardless of what other tools you're bringing to bear.
Well, no, absolutely no. That's what you bring to the table. That's when all bullshit aside, right? All the tools, all the tricks,
honestly, that's irrelevant. It's you.
Yeah.
It's you. You really did tear up a little. You are tearing up a little bit.
I mean, it's one of those things of if she had passed away 10, 15 years ago, oh, that's too bad. But or if she was still alive, but it's like I missed it. Like I would have loved to have let her know.
So
what it meant.
So I'll tell you what I did. So I did it right, and maybe so. I learned this a long time. I moved around a lot as a kid. I learned an awful lot as a kid, and I realized that a lot of people come and go in your life. Like a lot of people, like I was talking to Craig Luke, so I'm about to move to BC, and he goes to me, "Your relationships will change." I know better. That's not true. Relationships do change. They change all the time, right? You have them in the moment you have them in. What I've had to learn how to do is not only let them go for whatever course they may be, but also be thankful for the time I had with them, because it's very, very short. So this is what I did. When my book was published by Miro, my first book, The Watcher, I made it a point to go back to London, Ontario, where I actually got educated, and I found as many teachers as I could, and I personally thanked them. It's a really, really interesting rule of life, and I've learned this very hard. Not hard. I have the 8 rules to success. The 7th rule is be grateful, be charitable. And I've been doing this in my day job, thanking people. I realized something very profound about people. Everybody appreciates being appreciated. Everybody, because even if it's a little thing, right? It means the world, because it just for that, like they realize like I made a difference. And a good difference, because you're saying thank you for it. It's powerful.
And that strategy is also a bulwark against depression.
Yeah.
That's I don't want to overshare, and it's not because I'm ashamed. It's just I'm a very shy and private person. But I have had my issues with mental health in the past and ongoing. And a tactic I was taught was when you feel appreciation or thankfulness for something, like express it, even if it's just, oh, thank God it's not raining today, and I can walk to work and not have to worry. And I'll share a little bit of about a year ago. I had an injury, and I was in some pretty substantial pain for a while, and relying on medication. And it's kind of funny that I had about 90 seconds of lucidity that I can remember from last year, and then a couple of people reminded me of a few things. So I think about 300 seconds of lucidity over the entire weekend. But what ended up happening was with the chronic pain, and I'm not saying this is everybody's experience, and I can only talk about my own journey. A counselor that I was seeing said, when you are in that state, your brain rewires itself to search through the environment for threats. So there's a staircase, that could be a problem. Somebody's kid is running around, that could be a problem. The wonderful review of your story, the acceptance letter, birthday cake, time with your friends, your brain is like, that's not a threat, so that's just as important as a leaf on the sidewalk, and it shuffles it away. So you were literally looking through the world through the worst possible lens as a defense mechanism. But your brain takes a long time to wire itself, and even longer to unwire itself.
Yes, it does.
Especially when you're over 40, as I am. And so this was a technique my counselor gave me of saying, like, the negative thoughts you're having, to deny them isn't going to help. They're even if they're not true, they're real even if they're not true. And a guy by the name of Dan Harmon, who created Community and Rick and Morty, said, and that's really, really helped me. But what she said is, if you feel gratitude, that's kind of opposite of some of the negative self-talk you have with depression. Because you can say, oh, like somebody says, like, oh, Matt, I loved your story, and the depression says they're just saying that to be nice. But what the depression can't quite, and I'm not trying to say for everyone, but just for my own personal journey, if I say, all right, at least the sun is shining today and it's not raining when I'm walking to work, the depression can't really, because the depression wants to tear you, the individual, down, at least in my case. It can't really get at the weather. My depression doesn't give a shit about the weather. And so that tactic of feeling gratitude is a good way of saying, I can't necessarily feel good about myself yet because I'm still in the depths of this, but I can feel good about the weather, and I'm remembering what it's like to feel good and grateful about something.
Okay, so it's not quite the same thing. So I've been through hard times. I don't know. I've been depressed for moments, but I don't think I've ever really been in depression. So I cannot speak on that. What I will speak of is, I remember like one of the hardest times in my life was when I was in Arizona, and I've mentioned this on my podcast verbatim. So to listeners, I'm sorry, just the way it goes. But
it's new to me, folks.
Yeah. So what ends up happening where I ended up working for someone I really, really admired, and it did not go well. And so it made me very, very angry. But on top of that, I had to go back to something I had done previously to survive up there. which made me angrier. So for about a year, I was intensively angry, and I was just gung-ho determined to do things on my own. Well, and a little bit of that is good. Anger is a good wake-up fuel. It's a good jump start. You can't sustain yourself on it because sooner or later, here's the thing about life: life kicks your fucking ass, and it doesn't care how angry you are; it's just going to do it. So we got to the year point, and I remember going through that and thinking all these negative thoughts. Well, my teeth paid a huge price for that time of my life.
Okay, loud and clear.
Yeah, right, huge price for that time of my life, and I survived, and for a long time. At first, it was a battle scar because I almost felt it was disrespectful to ignore. I couldn't do it right away, fix them right away, but the other part of me was okay with that because it was like I survived this really big trial in my life, right? Big trial in my life. Later, I was afraid to fix them, and I've never actually said that part. I was afraid to fix them. But when I finally said that, I made that intellectual decision to do it. I got angry again for the first time year. And I couldn't figure out why. Right? I just couldn't because it was like I'm good with it. No, there's something in there, and I realized that two things. One, all the damage I still hadn't dealt with, I now had to deal with it. One. Two, it had made me reevaluate my time there. And one of the things I realized looking back, I didn't realize then, I didn't even realize it when I came out of there for a long time, was a lot of people helped me. Right? It's just that's when we're talking about the unwiring, rewiring concept there. When I went through it the second time, there was an anger there and there was a hurt there because I let this bad thing happen to me and there was nothing I could do about it and it sucked and I'm not gonna lie, the night right before I went and started doing the real changes, I cried because it was just that acknowledgement of that pain. But then what happened afterwards, the moment I did that, I started seeing things a little bit differently. Right? Don't get me wrong, I didn't see all the bad. I'm not saying I went through a great time during that time, but it wasn't quite as bad as I thought it was either. Right? And I wasn't alone. Even though I felt like it, I wasn't. And that was that was one of the two hardest things I did. The other thing I won't need to mention here, it had to do with the mentor, but in terms of what you're talking about, in terms of wiring and rewiring, it's just I find gratitude rewires your brain. It rewires your brain. If you can approach everything from the point of gratitude, also your depression, it's rebelling against that depression. If you do, right? I can't speak from that personal, but it resists pain. It resists anger, right? And that's a tricky balance. I think you do need a little bit of anger because you should be upset about some of the things that happen to you, but you can't let it rule you. You have to find a way to. Rebellion in my life is joy. Joy is rebellion, not anger. So you have to find a way to figure out how to turn that dark spot into something of joy. So I have a T-shirt with the next novel comment that you heard, of a unicorn pointing out the word sparkle, sparkle. Okay. Right? Sparkle, sparkle. Here's why. If you can look at a problem and say sparkle, sparkle to it, how serious can you take it? Right? Number one. Number two, right? It's another way of saying shit happens without any of the negative connotations to it. You just do. So. And it's from a mental health perspective. There's some people, and I'm not going this person, but there's some people who might say that's a bit of an ableist statement because some people can't feel joy. Yes. And so the notion of, and you're not saying this, but some people might hear this as, or have definitely heard others say, well, the cure for joy is, the cure for depression is you have to feel joy. And some people can't. There's certainly periods in my life where I could not. No. But the trap, though, is that, and something I've been learning, is that depression and addiction are very close siblings. Because with addiction, the substance will find any way it can, whether it's alcohol, whether it's tobacco, whether it's hard drugs,
whether it's gambling, whatever the so-called, and I say this without judgment, but whatever the vice is, it'll rewire your thinking to find any justification.
Yes.
Depression is the same way in that it is almost an entity in that it'll find anything, any excuse to come back and grab you. So, but the trick is recognizing that you don't want to be like this, and that can take some work because sometimes you think this is all I am. The trick though is then finding a technique that'll work for you, that will work for you.
Exactly.
Because if you were to say to me with who I am, and I'm not taking away you found your strategy, and God bless.
Yeah.
But if you say to me, try to find the joy in the situation, for me, I couldn't then, I can't, and I probably never will because I'm not a joyful person. But what I can find, and what is my drug, my good place, is satisfaction.
Okay, fair enough.
And so the idea of, I would love to love this short story. It is fundamentally flawed in a couple of ways that cannot be changed. However, I think I've written this to be as good as it can be. I will send it out to the world. And sometimes those stories, like a really well-reviewed short story of mine that's in my collection. It's called That Which Will Not Kill You, which I didn't read from. But I was asked by a publisher that I'd done a couple of stories with. They said, we're putting together this invite-only anthology. Can you contribute? I said, sure. And they said, sorry, it's a really tight timeline. This is the deadline. This is how many of the word count. Will you have something? And I said, can I let you know by the end of the week if I'm in or out? And they said, absolutely. So I went. I thought about it. I had an idea. They said, okay. And then something happened, and I only had like a week to write this story, which is a very, very short.
No, that's not a lot of time to turn around at all.
The idea was, the basic kernel of the idea was, what if Victor von Frankenstein was a near future combat surgeon with ready access to bodies, but lacking I'm up in my laboratory away from everybody, so there's a lot of people watching him. What would he do then?
Interesting.
So that was the kernel I started with at the beginning of the week, by Monday morning, and by Friday by 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. I'd sent off the story, and thought I met my obligation. I sent up the story. I did the best I could. If they reject it, I can then spend a little bit more time with it, or if they buy it, they buy it. And it was surprisingly people. And another one of those stories where Moore is clearly writing about blah 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 blah. I'm like, I don't think I was, but if you see it, it is definitely there. And so for me. I wasn't as bad a space then as I am presently, but that was all right. Am I jumping on the rooftops? Because I nailed it. It's like, no, I did the work. I put my head down. I met my commitments. I kept my business relationship solid from an objective point of view. I kept my business relationship warm from a subjective point of view. I delivered what I needed to deliver. And hey, you know what? I didn't think the story was so great. Other people did.
Awesome.
Done.
Yeah.
I can draw a nice little bow around that and move on to something else. So that's my fuel is more satisfaction.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Can I ask? I'm gonna ask one question. It might be a little bit awkward.
Sure.
But it's not my headspace, so I don't understand it.
Sure.
Is part of the appeal of depression is that it's familiar? And I ask that not because. I'm not saying no one wants to be sick. No one wants to feel like crap. No one wants to go through that. But if you're there for an extended period of time, it can become the only thing you know.
Yeah, part of it. I'll use the word trap.
Yeah.
And I know you're. I know you're looking for the right word because we don't have language for this, especially in English, especially as men, we don't have language for this. But part of the trap is it's familiar, and I'm glad you used the word familiar because some people say comfortable. It's not fucking comfortable.
No.
But it's familiar because you know how it works.
Yeah.
Because what you're worried about is, like, I'm originally from the United States, like you, and I had to learn French if I wanted a job in the public service here in Ottawa, and I had to learn it as an adult. I was never a good language student when I was in high school. I don't have the brain for it. But if I wanted to work here and have a career, I needed to learn that, and it took a long time. But I learned it. I put my head down, and I got it, and I'm okay.
Yeah.
But my problem is, or challenge is, as a writer, I love language.
Yes.
And so someone would say, Matt, you're probably never going to need to learn like this, particular structure, but here it is. And I'm like, oh, I know how that maps to English. Boom, I've got it.
Yeah.
And it's in my head. Where other people, because they're not comfortable with this kind of complexity of language, can never really internalize that.
Yeah.
And so I have been in situations where trying to use my second language, I will say something to somebody in French, and they will respond thinking, oh, you must be a francophone. That wasn't what I'm used to, and I just get completely lost. And part of that is accent. There's
Well,
there's a number of accents.
it's accent, but it's also culture. Because because my parents, my sons are Maltese and German, right? So how you can tell like how a language works, learn how they swear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because that tells you everything about what the culture values, right? And I find like language as an idea, like so the Semitic languages are very, very flowery. If you actually listen to how like with the actual translations, it comes across very, very flowery in terms of English description.
Yeah.
Right? It might be talking about just screwing someone in the ass, but it doesn't really matter, right? It's just the descriptives just fit, but that's how they think, and then again, it's a mentality.
Oh, yeah.
Same with French, right? Right.
I found myself when I was asking a question in French, I was thinking about my response in English.
Yeah.
Look at all the world languages. English and French really aren't that different, but different enough for me to realize I'm approaching the internal mechanisms of my mind differently because I'm thinking in French versus in English, which is a so much more transactional language. But anyway, I don't want to put too much out there in French now because I'm afraid of what I'll get back. It's the same thing with when you are in that depressive state, you almost you can sometimes end up sabotaging yourself because that's more comfortable.
Yes.
And I'll give a shout out to the show BoJack Horseman on Netflix, which is probably one of the best realistic presentations of. There's the Brian Wilson level of depression, which is real, and people who say they can't get out of bed are honestly, they do not have the energy. But there's a number of people who are dealing with depression who you think are functioning normally, but the inside of their head is not a
mess. Yeah.
And BoJack is great at that. So if I try to say I'm going to exercise positivity today or something, and I put that out in the world and I get it back, sometimes you don't know how to process that.
Yes.
And so it's almost easier to say, I'm going to be an asshole to somebody so that they're going to be an asshole back to me. And it's like, I know how to deal with that.
Yes.
And it's very, very easy. It's just like addiction. It's easy. It's very easy for an alcoholic to say, and they mean it. Tomorrow, I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to cut down on my drinking, and I'm going to get a handle on this. And then they wake up the next day and they feel good and they take a shower and they're doing this, and then there's an unexpected stressor and they're like, just one drink.
Yep.
And that's for years. Like I don't want to go into too much detail about how but I've personally I've seen addiction up front with alcohol, and the denial and the rationalization and depression is very, very similar to that in that it wants to stick around.
Yes.
It's a slippery fucker, and just when you think you've got a handle on it, it'll find a way to come back in. But and so I want to be honest, and I said I didn't want to talk about this for myself, but I deal. Everyone's journey is different, and I'm not somebody saying here that hey, if you're depressed, get your shit together. It's not that. It's
no,
what I think it is for me. I'm very lucky that I'm an introspective person, and the commandment "know thyself" is something I've done. So I do have that bit of advantage of I've kind of figured out. I can my detection for when my depression is getting a little bit much of a handle is fairly high, so I'm lucky in that way. But I think it's being honest with yourself.
Well, you undertook that. Well, no, I think that's depression or learning to be honest with yourself is an invaluable tool because it gives you a clear indication of what you are and what you want to do, good, bad, and indifferent. Like this is who you are, and it gives you and it gives you ways to avoid temptation. It gives you, if you're very smart, you can keep yourself in a good place. Shit happens. It happens to us all. Yep. But I mean, you can win more days than you lose, right?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
It's hard, but I mean, it's like any illness. Your body can probably treat a cold. If you don't treat a flu will fucking kill you.
Absolutely.
And it's a very common disease, and we got vaccines for it. But we talk about, I've got the flu, I'm going to take some time off work. But what are you doing? You're resting, you're relaxing, you're getting proper nutrition and proper hydration because we have that in for most of us in the Western civilization. Well, the flu fucking wiped out Europe, for crying out loud. I'm trying to treat it can come back. But everyone's got to. I don't want to be judging, but everybody's got to find their way. But please, if you do feel down, and it sounds like I'm blowing sunshine up your ass, and I'm being as realistic as possible. I'm not a sunshine. I'm not your fucking unicorn with a rainbow. But what I am saying is, you do have a way, even if the depression says it doesn't, and whatever that way is yours specifically. and it's probably not going to be the same path as other people have walked, but
Doesn't have to be.
it doesn't have to be, and it's never going to be. But the first step is, even if you don't think you're worth it, you're still on it, whether you want to be or not. Please walk.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's cool.
And so I'd like to move on past this.
No.
It's been honest, and I don't regret it. But I mean,
No. I to be
I don't
perfect.
wanna be the depressed writer.
No. I get you. Just this is where we went. So I just kind of went with it.
And the story Touch the Sky, they say, which was Great New World, is really about depression.
Yes.
The story is really about somebody who depression is right there, and they're it's very powerful, and they're fighting it, and they find that one thing. And it's actually an external locus of seeing others going through this, and kind of because in the story this person is deciding whether or not to give up, and other people are giving up around them. That's their journey. But there's this other character who's kind of, you can see, is fighting that same fight, and they recognize in each other that because you're fighting, that gives me hope. And the other is the same thing. And the ending is, it's not we're happy. The ending is I'm gonna
keep fighting.
I'm fighting the moment the story ends, and the character may give up at the end. I don't know. That's when the curtain closed for me. But it's the fight itself is worth it. It's like John Bon Jovi said during one of the most famous key changes and quarter note drops in history. Was you live for the fight when that's all that you've got.
I think that's actually all we do. I am changing. I think that's actually all we do have. Like, look, the journey. The journey is the journey. We all have a different journey. We all have different obstacles. We all have different challenges. And in the end, at the end of the day, like, we disappear. It's done. So I look at it kind of like, I don't worry about winning the battle. I worry about fighting the battle on my terms. I play a card game called Magic the Gathering. Right? I never was a competitive player. I was always the guy that wanted to build this cool little deck that worked a certain way.
Okay, yeah.
Right? I didn't care if I won. It's not that's not how I won the game. I won the game if my deck did exactly what I thought it would do. Now, if it could win, that would be even better, because it's like that's just bragging rights. But if it did exactly what it was supposed to do, it drove my opponent absolutely nuts.
Yep.
I won.
Yep. It's optimization, and I'm kind of the same way. I don't know if like my computer is running perfectly, but I like to, like, I'm constantly rearranging my file structures in Dropbox, and constantly doing that, because what can I make this a little bit better, a little bit more efficient? What are my desktop icons?
Yes.
Okay, those aren't working. I'm going to get rid of those, and what are the new ones I'm going to put on?
Well, yeah, I always try to make it better. I don't worry about perfect anymore. So the most important lesson I ever learned about art and life in general is my first kindergarten lesson.
Okay.
You take a marble, you dip it in paint, you put it in a box, and you let it roll around. That's it. That's the activity. I learned two very valuable lessons and they apply perfectly to art and life. First off, you're going to make a mess.
Yeah.
It's okay to make a mess.
Yeah.
Let the marble just do its thing, man. It's cool. Second part, right? Even in messes, there is beauty.
Yeah.
So, chocolate chip cookies was an accident. Someone accidentally put chocolate chips into cookie dough.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Someone put So here's the thing, right? The best accidents. Some accidents are chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah.
Some accidents are the other brown stuff that stinks.
Yeah.
Right? There's usually there's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
My whole career has been an accident. I accidentally started a podcast. I accidentally wrote a book. I accidentally got published. There's been just a series of heck. I accidentally met a dude that we were supposed to do a reading together.
Yep.
We came up with actually a pretty cool performance, if I say so myself.
Yep, that was good.
We rocked it. I had him laughing at elevator music and Wile E. Coyote.
That was very good.
Yeah. And he told these really cool stories.
Thank you.
Yes. And so if you wanted a more serious style of storytelling, Matt delivered it, and he delivered it in spades. If you wanted something that was a little bit, I'm not gonna say entertaining is the right word, but something a little less serious.
Yeah.
I fit that bill, and it was good. So everyone that came to our thing got a little bit of everything. It was like a circus. Some people liked the clowns, some people liked the big cars, some people liked the trampolines, and we did it all.
Yeah.
And we performed and we kicked ass, right? So
there's a certain silliness to your work, but it's not silly work, but it's the I forget what the word in English is, but in French it's quotidien. It means like daily, or not common as in common, but what you experience. And so there's silly shit that happens to you every single day. And what I found that you did is you incorporated that very nicely, where it's not a silly situation, but sometimes you have to find this. Your first thought is kind of a silly metaphor, is simile, and I thought that's what you did.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is you're keeping the reader off balance.
Yes.
But you're keeping them elevated. I mean, that's why Shaun of the Dead, I think,
Yeah.
is such a brilliant film. Is you can exhaust your reader, and this as a horror writer, you have to keep this in mind. You will exhaust your reader and make them numb. So that's why you generally have peaks and valleys in horror stories. What Shaun of the Dead did, and what your work did, is I'm going to evoke my reader with, let's say, the zombies first. Not
Yeah.
that the stories have zombies, but some. And then, as that gets a little too numb, I'm going to drop that. Then I'm going to go to the relationship with the ex-girlfriend.
Yes.
And when that gets a little too numb, I'm going to drop in the relationship with the mom. And so you were always evoked throughout that entire movie. It just keeps changing gears.
Yes.
Which is why, oh my God, the zombies. Now this kind of not quite great punchline lands because you're already evoked.
Well, I actually talked about this.
And your work does that as well.
Yeah. So what I talked about this, like I was talking to somebody here about how do you write funny well. It's like, the trick is the first joke is the key to everything you do, because the first joke sets the tone for every other joke you tell.
Okay, yeah, that's a good trick.
Right? The first joke has to be really good. The second joke doesn't have to be as good as the first one, but should be on par, right? The third joke shouldn't be as good.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth joke shouldn't be as good. The fifth joke should wallop them.
Yeah, the rhythm of it.
Yeah, there's a rhythm to. So I call it the Peter Parker method. Peter Parker as Spider-Man, when he's fighting crime, always tells jokes. The reason he tells jokes is because he's nervous all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the trick: never make all the jokes funny. Make a few of them unfunny. Right? He's laughing. He's the only one that should laugh sometimes, because when he actually hits something really funny, it's hilarious at that point. But if he's always funny, you go numb to the humor, and you shouldn't be going numb to the humor. This is how he's coping with the fact he's risking his life to help people for nothing.
Yep.
Right. So So the trick to humor is Peter Parker. Tell all kinds of jokes, not just. But the first couple you tell, have them be good, just really, really good, because you're setting the tone for everything else you do. We're going back to rules and structure a lot when I'm talking to you. I'm noticing that.
That's how I tend to view the world that way. Not that I'm trying to impose.
No.
Because it's just how my brain works. I'm an analyst, and I've always been good at math, and I find that I am vehemently against formula in writing.
Absolutely.
I'm a big fan of structure, though. But what you can do is don't slavishly follow the structure. But when you're stuck on something, like if I'm trying to write a really good character piece with really great dialogue that's showing this lover's spat, I might rely a little bit on underlying structure, which may be a bit like B-level effort, but I'm applying A-level effort up here. And the structure doesn't matter, nobody's going to see it, but understanding how story works, understanding how beat structure works, like what you're talking about is beats. That can really, really help you as a writer, especially when you want to circumvent expectations. Like I was doing what's called a Blue Pencil Cafe here, which is I sit down with someone, they give me their work, and I have 15 minutes to go through as much as I can. And so they gave me their work, and I'm introduced in the first paragraph to 3 characters. And I think I know which one I'm supposed to follow because she's the first one named, but I'm not quite sure. So what I said to her, and this was a novel, short story, fun, but this was a novel, so I said, I need to spend a little bit more time to know who am I following in this. Cinema, you can get away with that with misdirection because it's visual. Here, I need to know who I should be invested in. But I also said to her but because that's a common trope, first character named in the scene is probably the one we're supposed to be following because it's their journey. But if that's a great way to do misdirection, is you introduce your particular character, let's call him Josh. Josh this and that, and I'm following, here's a reason to like Josh. Boom, Josh is dead. You're like, holy shit, I didn't see that coming. Why didn't you see that coming? I understand structure, and I'm circumventing your expectations of structure. That's right.
I'm hitting you with the real punchline. Like, I'm going to go with one more Dark Knight, the bank robbery.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah.
That is fantastic.
That's awesome misdirection.
Yes.
Until you go back and rewatch it, and then I'm just like, oh, Nolan is just rubbing our faces in this.
Oh no, but that's what a magician does.
Oh yeah.
That's what all magicians do. Right. A magician goes, I'm not misleading you. It's right here. It always is right here. My other favorite one is the Matrix, the first Matrix movie. So I watched it and I was like, oh God, you guys are assholes. So there's a scene where remember when the Oracle reads Neo, goes, you're waiting for something.
Yeah.
What? The next life maybe, who knows? You get to the end of the movie, it's like, oh, you gotta be shitting me.
Yeah.
You gotta be shitting me. It's like rubbing your nose, but it's a magician's trick. The best, if it's too like the Dark Knight Rises, it was too heavy-handed. Within 20 minutes, the only question I had was which girl he would end up with.
Okay.
Right. That was the only question I had. Because it was like it was going to be one or the other. right?
Right.
And he misdirected me there good, but he heavy-handed the ending when Alfred did his whole spiel. It's like, oh god, that's the ending. Shit. Okay.
I about that film and talking about misdirection, I think I have a number of issues with The Dark Knight Rises, but I think where it got that wrong was as soon as they said, okay, we're doing Anne Hathaway as Catwoman, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And Marion Cotillard, who is like such a fantastic actor, as this no-name character who's just kind of like so-and-so and such and such. It's like, you're really overselling these. She's Talia al Ghul. She's Talia al Ghul. Like, I knew that immediately from...
I didn't look up any of the casting, so I just watched it raw. I knew there was more to her than met the eye at some point, but for whatever reason, my brain just wouldn't say Talia, right? It's like, it just didn't say it till the very end. It's like, I'm an idiot. Okay, well done. I'd never seen it before, but I knew, obviously I knew there was a mastermind behind Bane, but Bane was done really well. That's the one thing I did like about that. That was how Bane should have always been done, but that was the first time it was done well. But that movie did of the three of them, that's the one that faltered a lot in terms of there were some structural flaws in that movie, and that's it.
Yeah. And something that I've learned from cinema as an author is the idea of when Sixth Sense put
the red.
I see dead people in the trailer. If you go back and think, that is the twist. That really is the twist. We all knew it. And the marketing of this was brilliant, of saying, because nobody's going to expect the final twist.
Yes.
And so what I've learned
and it's his best movie because of that, actually.
And what I've learned as a writer is, like, I'm working on my novel right now, and what I've had to do thinking about marketing it is, how am I going to describe this jacket copy? Then I'm like, mostly, I hope I get to write it, but even if the marketing team, wherever it ends up, writes it, there's a twist here that's going to be spoiled by this. So I cannot set this twist up as a twist. I have to telegraph it, because it's going to be ruined by the jacket copy. It's the same thing with trailers that give away too much, or trailers that Star Trek Into Darkness. We're casting Benedict Cumberbatch. He's Khan. No, he's not Khan. No, he's Khan.
He's Khan. He's the only role he fits. It's the only role he actually fits.
And so, like, you have to. It's one thing if you write your work and you've got this great twist or this great misdirection happening. The marketing afterwards will impact what people go into your work with. So yes, sometimes twists can work. My friend Adam Shafto doesn't believe that spoilers should be a thing. It's like, we can discuss the work, and if you know a lot about it or nothing about it going into it, I disagree.
Spoilers. The less spoilers you have, the better the experience.
That's my view.
Yeah.
Adam disagrees, but we have two different points of view.
Yeah.
But understand, as a writer, if you are working on something long form, imagine what the jacket copy will be. So
that's something I haven't actually considered, right?
So imagine you have a story where you have, let's say, a cop, a hard-boiled detective, and an ER doctor. And halfway through, you kill the cop. You set the cop up to be your main character. Boom, the cop's dead. Oh my God, I didn't see that coming. And then the ER doctor and the private detective go on, blah, 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 happy ending or not. If the jacket copy is so-and-so hard-boiled PI and so-and-so detective find themselves, or so-and-so ER doctor, the private detective and the ER doctor find themselves thrown into the blah, blah, blah. Okay, the jacket copy, this sounds really cool. Let me start reading. Oh, who's this detective character? They weren't mentioned. They're probably not important.
Yeah.
So if you want to have that misdirection, if you have the influence with the publisher to say, I want this to be the cop, the PI, and the ER doctor, so when you kill the cop in a quarter of the way through the book, I have the impact of that being a twist or not for a scene. So that's something to keep in mind, and that was a lesson learned, especially when I did work for Choosing Publications, a small press publisher, of looking at what jacket copy was being written, and then having read the books, realizing there can be an interplay there to enhance the storytelling experience by what little you need to give the person to convince them to pick up and buy the book, and then remember that goes in, because usually the jacket copy is written afterwards, but you have to see this as...
Well, no, you see this as the whole product. And actually, going back to something we were talking about with audiobooks, the whole storytelling experience. That's actually part of the story that a lot of people overlook, including me. Thank you.
Yeah.
So...
Do you want to wrap this up? We've got a party to get to.
We do. I just want to say, you were a pleasant surprise this weekend, my friend.
Thank you very much. You as well. I'm looking forward to getting to know you better and collaborating on whatever the universe throws our way.
Yes. So... Do you know when your next book's out by any chance?
No, I'm working on it right now. I know that my publisher, Cheesing Publications, wants to see it as soon as it's done. But I also know that their production schedule is
Okay.
full.
So how about this then? Do you have anything else coming out at this point?
I have a short story that's going to be in a anthology that Cheesing is doing called The War on Christmas.
Why don't we promote that then? Like
Okay.
we promote that, then we promote your book, and then how people can find you. Does that work for you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, The War on Christmas. It's an anthology that is pretty much a iconoclastic, irreverent look at Christmas. That is as far as the theme went. I wrote I don't want to give away too much because talking about setting up.
Yeah.
But it's basically that Santa Claus becomes the United States enemy number one. And there are some people who look at him quite negatively and wants to completely eliminate Christmas as a public holiday. And then there are those who think, well, Santa has rebelled against Christmas. We shouldn't. He doesn't define the holiday. He's just and then so is it really about Jesus' birth? Is it about Santa Claus? And so it kind of reflects a bit of the culture wars we're having of this particular event happens. This slice of society is going to view it this way. This slice of society is going to view it this way. And I wrote this story a couple of years ago because the anthology was delayed a year. Not quite seeing, or maybe my subconscious did, how polarized the United States would come, because it is set in the United States. Because I think like Canada's enemy number one is like, oh, this person didn't recycle properly, but I really wanted that militarization element to it.
So Coca-Cola's secret enemy of the Christmas wars? I'm joking.
Yeah, I know.
No, because Coca-Cola is the reason why Santa Claus has the look he has today.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know that at the time, and maybe have been able to factor that in. But it's mostly about the reaction of different people to
Santa Claus becoming unwanted.
Santa becoming enemy number one, and some people saying
it's
punish him, and other people are saying no, like you're misconstruing this. And I even play a little bit with the element of, well, what if there are multiple Santa Clauses? How can he get around the world so quickly? Maybe there are multiple Santa Clauses, and this one Santa Claus is bad, but there's others, and why should we paint them with the same brush? So
that's actually a cool idea. That's a really cool idea.
So I don't want to say too much.
No.
The rest of the anthology is like that. I've heard. I haven't read it yet, but that should be coming out for Christmas this year.
Okay.
My short story collection is called It's Not the End and Other Lies. My name is Matt Moore, Mattmore, which will probably be in text written around this, so I don't need to say that. But my website is mattmorewrites.com, where I don't update it that often, but that's where you can find me. And
social media?
At Matt Moore Writes on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Tumblr, I'm not going to give out my email address.
No. I don't expect you to do that.
But if you find Matt Moore Writes on various platforms, now of course somebody's going to go on someplace like Pornhub and use that username, which will not be me. But that's where you can.
Well,
there'll be links in the description.
There'll be, but on the same token, now you've inspired a brand new character for somebody else. Man, think about it like that.
What,
Matt Moore and the porn. Why not?
Not me.
Not you.
Not my genre. Not my medium.
No, but somebody else's.
And that was my conversation with Matt Moore. Now, Matt's books are no longer available through Cheesing due to Cheesing's situation. More on that another day. I'm not going to talk about too much bad news. I will say Matt's a great writer. He's a good dude. Great person. I want to perform with him again. So Matt, listening to me, when the world gets less crazy, let's do it again sometime, huh? I'll read about killer cupcakes. You can read about whatever you like. Deal? Deal. And thanks for coming on my show, man. You're welcome anytime. So let's keep this real. Let's talk. How do I put this? So the show for going forward is going to go like this. 2 interviews a week. I'm going to have 2 interviews still. I'm still getting interviews even now. It's crazy. I'm going to keep. And yeah, if anyone wants to talk, be interviewed for the pod, I'm open for it. I still got plenty of interviews in the pipe, but I'm always open for new people and new possibilities. But every weekend there's going to be a story, and it's going to expand. I've already started doing some stuff to expand it. beyond just me. I will still be mainly me, at least for a bit, but I do have some plans going forward. I've reached out to some people, and we're going to see what we can do. I think it's important right now, especially in this day and time, is, again, I'm looking at this kind of like being like C.S. Lewis. So C.S. Lewis, during World War II, when London was being bombed, would go out and read what would become mere Christianity to the masses. And I thought about that. It's like, and I understood it. I actually understood it. What's going on is bigger. I don't know if this is the right decision, wrong decision. I'm not going to debate any of that stuff on the air. I have my own thoughts. I'm sure others do too. But the thing about it is, you know what? It doesn't matter. We're here. And society, as we know it, has come to a grinding halt. The interesting thing is, I do think this is a giant opportunity, no matter how you look at it. And I think this moment in time, this window in time, we all have a chance to change things up. So what I'm doing is, while in this uncertainty and this fear of the unknown, this panic, whatever's going on, I'm going to go out and I'm going to read my story because it's something I can do. And I'm inviting each and every one of you to do the same. I feel this is very important and necessary. Look, John 12 Hawks said it best. Art is ultimately an expression of hope. And hope, more than anything else, hope, joy, happiness, that's what we need right now, more than anything else. So that is what I'm going to focus on. Creating happiness in adversity is a worthwhile thing, I think. And I hope you guys all feel the same way. And if you want to join me, let me know. Contact me. That will do it for this episode of Just Joshing. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so a number of different ways. Subscribe to it. I'm on every platform now: iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher. I'm on all of those things. Just look up Just Joshing. Like the podcast, share the podcast. I am everywhere. I'm on YouTube. Joshua Pantelleresco is my channel. I have 299 episodes of the podcast there right now. You can listen at your leisure. I have a merchandise part at jpantelleresco.redbubble.com. I have books: The Watcher, Storm Dancer, Wandering God, from MirrorWorldPublishing.com. They have a sale right now. Check them out. Also, while we're on the subject, the Cloud Diver, stay tuned. More details coming soon. But every weekend you can listen to the Cloud Diver on this show. So definitely check out my works. Beyond all that, my Twitter and Instagrams at jpantelleresco. Say hi, do your thing. Above all else, guys, stay inspired, keep living, keep thriving. Life begins with adversity. All right, guys, see you next time.
Josh.